Hello, everyone. This is the history of hypnosis. Many cultures have used hypnosis throughout time to create emotional and physical personal improvements, and in some form or another, hypnosis has been part of every culture throughout time. It's important to note this discussion incorporates the broadest definition of hypnosis, which would be any state of trance that produces an improvement in the individual's well-being. This can include positive thinking. Any given practitioner with access to unusual personal healing powers, which are asserted during the treatment, engaging healing powers repudiated to come from the spirit world. Many popular definitions of hypnosis contain the idea that the mind receives an overload of message units. And when the cup of message units becomes too full, and the client can no longer process or has the capacity to process, the client escapes by letting everything go and melting into relaxation or hypnosis. In short, those interested in hypnosis and similar processes have learned from one another over time through observation, collaboration, and open dispute. These events have ricocheted off one another to form current-day hypnosis. This history includes the whole of hypnosis's unusual development over time. Although history includes some unusual and seemingly odd traditions, the student should know that hypnosis today usually does not include these mysterious protocols and seemingly bizarre practices. Some of the recorded information comes from over 5,000 years ago, from the time of Egypt's Old Kingdom. The Temple of Imhotep in the city of Saqqara, Egypt, was an important healing center in the late 3rd century BC. One such healing process was referred to as the sleep temple. Individuals would journey to the temple searching for a cure from the gods. After ingesting herbs and hours of recitation of rhythmic prayers, the individual was led to a darkened chamber to sleep and await a dream revealing a cure. This process eventually spread to Greece, where special sleep temples were built. They were dedicated to the god of Asclepius, whose symbol was a snake. When the ailing patients entered the sleep chamber to sleep and wait for their healing dreams, the chamber was stocked with numerous snakes, thought to invoke the healing powers of Asclepius. The ancient practice of oracles employed by the temples divined the future. Here, too, participants drank herbal mixtures and were led through candle-lit chambers. By far, the most well-known is the Oracle of Greece, which remained in continuous use for over 1,000 years. The philosopher Heraclitus described these divinators in the 6th century BC as follows. The Lord, who is the oracle of Delphi, neither speaks nor hides his meaning, but gives a sign, and is Sibyl with raving lips, uttering mirthless, unadorned, and unperfumed, reaches over 1,000 years with her voice, thanks to the god inside her. Seated over a crack in the earth, which emitted intoxicating fumes, her job was to hear the questions of the supplicants and receive answers from the god Apollo. Her proclamations were not taken lightly. She was sought out by people from all levels of society, including rulers seeking advice on matters of state. One such ruler, Alexander the Great, consulted an oracle in Egypt to bolster his confidence before embarking on a major campaign to conquer Persia in the 4th century BC. Many European and trance traditions, like sleep temples and oracles, ended with the advent of Christianity over the course of the 1st millennium CE. Many Christian rituals and holidays specifically incorporated local pagan traditions in order to make an easier transition to the new belief system, often incorporating trance, including elements like incense, images, and singing. In the mid-18th century, an Austrian physician came to the forefront of hypnosis and became the basis for modern-day hypnosis. Dr. Fran Anton Mesmer. Interested in magnetic treatments and astrology and their effects on human health, during a magnetic treatment with a patient, Mesmer felt animal magnetism, which he sensed was a fluid traveling through the woman's body who he was treating, and felt that this fluid was affected by his own will. He named this animal magnetism. He felt that the intensity of this fluid varied from person to person, thereby giving some individuals greater ability to heal others through more effective manipulation of these fluids. Mesmer moved to Paris, where he found a student population which was more enthusiastic about his methods. A contemporary English doctor described Mesmer in vivid detail, described his healing sessions in vivid detail. The apartment, hung with mirrors, was dimly lit. Mystery, profound silence was observed, broken only by strains of music, which occasionally floated through the rooms. The patients were seated around a vat that contained a heterogeneous mixture of chemical ingredients. With this and with each other, they were placed in relation by jointed rods or cords or by holding hands. Among them moved Mesmer, mysteriously and slowly, affecting one by a touch, another by a look, a third by passes with his hand, a fourth by pointing a rod. One person became hysterical, then another. One was seized with catalepsy, others with convulsions, others with palpitations of the heart, perspirations, or bodily disturbances. The method was supposed to provoke in the sick person an emotional and physical reaction that would lead to full healing for their condition. To the uninitiated, the scene was full of wonderment. The extraordinary tales of Mesmer's personal power over individuals are probably both exaggeration and real results, but do speak to the skills and personal power of him as a healer. By the mid-1780s, Mesmer's healing systems had drawn the attention of the French, and in particular Louis XVI, who convened a panel of renowned scientists to evaluate mesmerism. This panel included royal doctors and respected scientists, including Benjamin Franklin. The panel concluded that Mesmer did not contain a fluid which sourced animal magnetism, that the human body did not contain previously undiscovered channels, and that any effects of his treatments were due slowly to the imagination of the subjects. Mesmer was ruined by this report and retreated to Vienna to live out his life in obscurity. Some mesmerists, however, continued to practice healing using Mesmer's processes. One was the Marquis de Puysegur, who applied his processes in an attempt to heal a peasant boy named Victor, who was suffering from a severe flexation on his chest. Victor, during the treatment, went into deep trance. After falling into this deep sleep, he began to talk about his private life. Then he became sad. Puysegur offered Victor positive suggestions to cheer him up. After an hour, Victor awoke with his symptoms relieved. During this process, Puysegur noticed some similarities between Victor's trance and sleepwalking, and termed this condition artificial somnambulism, now still a common term used in today's hypnosis sessions. The first recorded instance of hypnosis being used as anesthesia occurred on April 12, 1829, in Paris. Dr. Jules Cloquet, who worked in conjunction with the Mesmerists to aid a female patient who had breast cancer, cut. The first recorded instance of hypnosis being used as anesthesia occurred on April 12, 1829, in Paris. Dr. Jules Cloquet worked in conjunction with a mesmerist to aid a female patient who had breast cancer. Herbert Mayo described the operation. She was prepared for the operation by Monsieur Champlain, who over several days threw her into a state of trance by the ordinary mesmeric manipulations. She was then like an ordinary sleepwalker and would then converse with indifference about the contemplated operation, the idea of which, previous to the operation, filled her with a state of terror. During the whole of the operation, the patient exhibited not the slightest sign of suffering. Her expression of countenance did not change, nor was the voice, the breathing, the pulse at all affected. When Mayo was asked why he did not use this method for all his patients, he replied that he did not dare use this method publicly as there was so much prejudice against mesmerism in Paris at the time. He feared losing his reputation and therefore his income. The public distrust of mesmerism led to many such instances of hypnotists keeping their studies to themselves without publication, which contributed to the air of strangeness and distrust surrounding the subject. Once the dedicated mesmerists began solidifying the techniques of mesmerism and documenting concrete results, the practice began gaining more legitimacy in the early 19th century. James Braid, in 1841, a medical doctor, became one of the most significant figures in hypnosis. At the age of 46, he experienced his first mesmer show. The Scottish doctor received his training at the University of Edinburgh and became a respected surgeon. This first observation of mesmerism occurred in Manchester, England in 1841. He then received permission from the Swiss traveling show to observe the process up close. And after months of intense observation, Dr. Braid formed his conclusions. The doctor disliked the associations with the word mesmerism. He adopted de Cuvier's terms, hypnotism and hypnotist. These phrases were coined by de Cuvier, originating from the hypnos, The doctor disliked the associations with the word mesmerism. This is the real one. The doctor disliked the associations with the word mesmerism. He adopted de Cuvier's terms, hypnotism and hypnotist. These terms were coined earlier by de Cuvier, originating from hypnos, the Greek god of sleep. He was the first to use these words in English and reported, "I have now entirely separated hypnotism from animal magnetism. I consider it to be a speedy mode of throwing the nervous system into a condition which may be rendered eminently available in the cure of certain disorders. I feel quite confident we have acquired in this process a valuable addition to our curative needs." Dr. Braid's experiments and writings on hypnosis quickly made him the preeminent figure in hypnosis in the English-speaking world. His efforts added considerable respect to the field of hypnosis. He invented eye fascination, a hypnotic technique still in use today. In this process, the client stares at a shiny object held above the eyes. The strain of holding the object above the eyes creates eye fatigue, letting the eyes close to more quickly relax. After James Braid's successes in the last half of the 19th century, scientists around Europe began experimenting with his techniques in increasing numbers. Much of this activity was centered in France. This renewed enthusiasm for hypnosis, fueled by healthy differences in style and technique, led to the emergence of two different schools of hypnosis. One was the Nancy school, led by Ambrose Leopold and Hippolyte Bernheim, and two, the Salpêtrière school, led by Jean-Martin Charcot. Not long after graduating from medical school and opening a small medical practice in the small French town Nancy, Ambrose Leopold became acquainted with a student of James Braid and became fascinated with the concept of hypnotism. After he learned the technique, he began using it with his patients to ease pain and accelerate healing. Eventually, a patient came to Leopold who was experiencing severe sciatica. After a short series of treatments from Leopold, the sciatica disappeared. This man previously sought healing from a university professor, Hippolyte Bernheim. After being cured by Leopold, he returned to the university to inform Bernheim of his success. Bernheim and Leopold eventually joined forces and The man previously sought healing from a university. This man previously sought healing from a university professor, Hippolyte Bernheim. After being cured by Leopold, he returned to the university to inform Bernheim of his success. Bernheim and Leopold eventually joined forces and started the Nancy School, which believed that hypnosis was a natural curative process that operated through mental suggestion, a concept that they called suggestive therapeutics. Leopold pioneered the concept that different hypnotic techniques could be used for different uses. Leopold pioneered the concept that different hypnotic depths could be used for different issues, as well as the use of repetitive suggestions. Okay. Leopold pioneered the concept that different hypnotic depths should be used for different issues, as well as the use of repetitive suggestions. Bernheim, on the other hand, became fascinated with confabulation and false memories, the ability to hypnotize patients and create new memories or accept false memories as fact. In 1891, Bernheim hypnotized a patient to believe that a noisy neighbor had been singing loudly by an open window. Leopold pioneered the concept that different hypnotic techniques Leopold pioneered the concept that different hypnotic depths should be used for different issues, as well as the use of repetitive suggestions. Bernheim, on the other hand, became fascinated with confabulation and false memories. The ability to hypnotize patients and create new memories or accept false memories as fact. In 1891, Bernheim hypnotized a patient to believe that a noisy neighbor had been singing loudly by an open window through the night, and that the patient heard the noise and was kept awake by it. The next morning, Bernheim asked the patient how he slept, and the patient recounted the hypnotic suggestion as though it were fact. Throughout the end of the 19th century, the Nancy school was opposed by another group, which was academically more highly regarded, the Salpêtrière school, founded by Jean-Martin Charcot. The Salpêtrière school, along with the Nancy school, contributed to the age of hypnosis in France from 1882 to 1892. Charcot became one of the founders of modern neurology when he opened up the world's first clinic, one of the first clinics. Just read it like it is. The Salpêtrière school, along with the Nancy school, contributed to the age of hypnosis in France from 1882 to 1892. Charcot became one of the founders of modern neurology when he opened up the world's the Salpêtrière school. The Salpêtrière school, along with the Nancy school, contributed to the age of hypnosis in France from 1882 to 1892. Charcot became one of the founders of modern neurology when he opened up the world's first clinic devoted to the study of the brain and the mind in the Salpêtrière Hospital in 1882, where he became the first physician to identify multiple sclerosis and AML, currently known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Aside from physical disorders, he was fascinated with disorders of the mind and was a leading researcher in the field of hysteria, a term used to describe a wide variety of psychological and developmental disorders. Charcot came to the conclusion that hysterical patients entered a state of hypnosis during their outbursts, and therefore only people suffering from hysteria could enter the hypnotic state. Charcot and his circle maintained that hypnosis was simply a state of hysteria, a disturbed, atypical mental state that should never be induced into any individual due to its destabilizing effect. Charcot only used hypnosis with hysterical patients because he felt he could utilize the state. Dear God Almighty. Charcot came to the conclusion that hysterical patients entered a state of hypnosis during their outbursts. Charcot came to the conclusion that hysterical patients entered a state of hypnosis during their outbursts, and therefore only people suffering from hysteria could enter the hypnotic state. Charcot and his circle maintained that hypnosis was simply a state of hysteria, a disturbed, atypical mental state that should never be induced into any individual due to its destabilizing effect. Charcot only used hypnosis with hysterical patients because he felt he could utilize the state to work against itself. The Nansei school deplored this evaluation of hypnosis, which associated fearful states with a hypnotic condition. Over a 20-year period, the two sides waged a kind of war through scholarly papers, each building their position and attempting to diminish the opposing side. Eventually, scientific thought swung to the side of the Salpêtrière school, primarily due to the reputation of its founder. After some time, however, the scientific community began to see the proclamations of the Nansei school to be equally valid. Some notable thinkers of the time deeply considered the position of both sides. One of these individuals was Sigmund Freud, who through these studies ended up changing the focus of his ambitions from neurology to psychology and changing the field of mental health forever. Sigmund Freud attended the Salpêtrière School in 1885 as a neurology student, and through these studies ended up being drawn to psychology, including hypnosis, which also led him to the Nansei School to view another perspective. Freud was raised in a middle-class Jewish family and attended medical school at the University of Vienna. Freud encountered hypnosis a few years before studying with Charcot through collaboration with his mentor Joseph Breuer. Breuer was treating a woman suffering from hysteria as a result of her father's terminal illness and eventual death. This woman was given the pseudonym Anna O. The patient suffered from a variety of physical and mental symptoms, including pain, speech disturbances, inability to eat or drink. Breuer used hypnosis to try to temper her symptoms through relaxation. While in hypnosis, she spoke freely about the memories that arose, which had no association with the session at hand. Over a period of 2 years, Breuer continued to treat Anna O, and during this time developed his theories of psychoanalysis, which Freud adopted. In the early years of his practice, Freud used hypnosis frequently, preferring a more dominant, paternalistic approach. But after further developing psychoanalysis and free association, he ended up rejecting hypnosis on the grounds that it did not effectively But after further developing psychoanalysis and free association, he rejected hypnosis on the grounds that it did not effectively do away with client resistance, yielding only incomplete information and temporary results. It was partly due to Freud's role in developing psychology as a field of academic study that hypnosis is not taught as a field of study in most universities to this day. Despite Freud's rejection of hypnosis, it continued to become more popular around the turn of the century, including such organizations as the British Medical Association in 1892. Another important influence on the field of hypnosis at this time was Émile Coué. As a practicing pharmacist, Coué, in a small city in France, he noticed the strong effects of positive suggestion and placebos. When praising the medication and leaving positive notes with the patients, Coué noticed that these words resulted in a more positive outcome for the... Another important influence on the field of hypnosis at the time was Émile Coué. As a practicing pharmacist, Coué, in a small city in France, he noticed let's put that comma in there. Another important influence on the field of hypnosis at the time was Émile Coué. As a practicing pharmacist, Coué, In a small city in France, he noticed the strong effects of positive suggestion and placebos. When praising the medication and leaving positive notes with the patients, Coué noticed that these words resulted in a more positive outcome. After he learned about the non-say schools of theories of suggested therapeutics, he began studying under Leopold and Bernheim in 1901, and then began offering optional hypnosis sessions to his pharmaceutical clients. He felt that the suggestions the clients were offered were more powerful. After he learned about the non-say schools theory After he learned about the non-say school theories of suggested therapeutics, he began studying under Leopold and Bernheim in 1901. He then began offering optional hypnosis sessions to his pharmaceutical clients. He felt that the suggestions the clients offered were more powerful than his. After learning about the non-say school After he learned about the non-say school's theories of suggested therapeutics, he began studying under Leopold and Bernheim in 1901, and then began offering optional hypnosis sessions to his pharmaceutical clients. He felt that the suggestions the clients offered After he learned about the non-say school's theories of suggested therapeutics, he began studying under Leopold and Bernheim in 1901, and then began offering optional hypnosis sessions to his pharmaceutical clients. He felt that the suggestions the clients were offering were more powerful than his, leading him to become an advocate of self-hypnosis, labeling it auto-suggestion. His famous mantra was, "Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better." His book, Self-Mastery Through Conscious Autosuggestion, explains that autosuggestion is something we do all through our lives, naturally, but can also be dangerous. Conscious application of autosuggestion empowers and uplifts. On the other hand, unconscious autosuggestion, commonly known in today's lingo as playing old negative tapes, can be quite dangerous. Coué and Freud helped to expand hypnosis beyond the field of psychology into the field of behavior modification. As the popularity and credibility of hypnosis grew, researchers became more interested in the larger issue of trance. They began studying trance traditions, largely in indigenous cultures. Broadly defined, a shaman is someone who believes that he heals by manipulating the power of spirits by using a trance technique. The classic shamans across Siberia and Asia were some of the first to be studied by Europeans. Known for their drum beating, methodical chanting, and colorful costumes, these shamans filled an important role for their cultures. Known for their drum beating, methodical chanting, and colorful costumes, these shamans filled an important role for their cultures, acting as a conduit of healing between the earthly plane Known for their drum beating, methodical chanting, and colorful costumes, these shamans filled an important role for their cultures, acting as a conduit of healing between the earthly plane and the spirit world. Similar to the sleep temples, the shamans included expectation, sensory overload, and suggestion in their rituals to heal and predict. Some examples are South Korean shamans known as mudangs, who are prosper. Oh, God. Some examples are South Korean shamans known as mudangs, who are prospering even in the face of progress. An African based Voodoo traditions continued. In Africa, shamans are known as Vodans, and their traditions continue to thrive in the Caribbean and South America. As Europeans traveled to exotic locations to research these traditions, at the same time, as Europeans traveled to exotic locations to research these traditions, at the same time, unfamiliar cultures were making themselves known in the U.S. In 1889, American settlers in the plains were becoming concerned about a popular Native American ritual called the ghost dance. Participants chanted and danced for hours, focusing on deliverance from Euro-American society to bring about its destruction and reinforcement of American traditions and culture. Although rituals were peaceful, the U.S. Army violently ended the practice at the famous Wounded Knee Massacre. If the settlers had understood that the ritual was a coping mechanism for adjusting to a foreign way of life, much bloodshed could have been avoided. Once hypnosis began to expand in the earliest Once hypnosis began to expand in the early 20th century to areas like self-help and psychology, its growth opened up new areas of study. In the 1920s, stage hypnosis and vaudeville acts began to increase. One famous performer was Dave Ellman, who subsequently went on to become a respected hypnotherapist and wrote the classic manual Hypnotherapy. At this time, the first large-scale scientific study of hypnosis was performed at the University of Wisconsin, led by Clark Hull. His book, Hypnosis and Suggestibility, used years of clinical data to explain what hypnosis is, and with the application of hypnotic techniques, his books. Oh, that's lovely. Might want to silence your damn phone. His book, Hypnosis and Suggestibility, used years of clinical data to explain what hypnosis is, and with the application of hypnotic techniques, the subject can experience unusual positive change. In addition, he established that hypnosis could not impart extraordinary sensory or physical capabilities, but that it did have the ability to alter perception of pain or alter memory. One eager young student, after watching the demonstration of hypnosis, was named Milton Erickson. He went on to become one of the most well known hypnotherapists of the 20th century. Stricken with polio as a youth, Erickson taught himself a form of self hypnosis to overcome the lingering pain and stiffness caused by the disease. Erickson's protocols and procedures are still popular in some forms of hypnosis today. During World War II, hypnosis was used in Army hospitals to treat any number of battle trauma issues, such as fears, phobias, and dissociation. The most common kind of technique they used was abreaction, a kind of regression, taking the client back to the challenging incident and having them relive it to vent it out, which reportedly did benefit some patients. So, this is the conclusion of the history of hypnosis. It's quite a large overview and includes many different modalities and many different This has been a broad overview of the history of hypnosis and of cultures and traditions contributing to it.